And it was last week, in fact, we had a case where we did a final trial. I was able to synthesize my client's story, got her almost everything she really asked for. After we narrowed down some of her issues, we got her almost everything that she asked for, and we got a $31,000 judgment in it.
Hello, and welcome to the Attorney Post, your guide to the inside scoop when it comes to all things legal. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with lawyers at the top of their game to help you navigate the ins and outs of the various legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by the lovely Lisa Bustos, who runs the eponymous law firm that bears her name, Bustos Family Law. Before we get started, as always, we're going to jump over and take a look at her website. You can find her website at bustosfamilylaw.com. As always, we will have a link in the description down below. Also, you can give her law firm a phone call. That is 512-766-2768. Again, all of that will be in the show notes as always. But if you need a family law attorney in the Austin area, Bustos Family Law might be a really great resource for you. And we're going to dig into that here in just a little bit. Before we do that, we're going to jump over and read from our sponsors. Our first sponsor today is National ERC. You may have noticed that the world went through a pandemic and many businesses were forced to shut down or reduce their hours, and they had supply chain issues and interruptions and ultimately suffered from reduced revenue in 2020 and 2021. What you may not know is that Congress recently passed the CARES Act, which allocated $400 billion in stimulus funds for small businesses that never needs to be paid back. This is not a loan like PPP or the Paycheck Protection Program. This is essentially free money for your business that can be spent in whatever way you think makes the most sense right now. National ERC is helping small businesses get the maximum amount of money that they can, and you can calculate and see how much you can get back by visiting nationalerc.org. The average small business they work with gets over $200,000 to reinvest back into their business that never needs to be paid back. The calculator is free, and there's never a fee unless they secure funding for you. That's nationalerc.org. And our second sponsor today is Groove Funnels. If you love spending $5,000 to $10,000 to build a new website, you love paying monthly hosting fees of $200 or $300 on a platform that allows you to sell products to your potential clients or customers, then by all means, keep doing whatever it is that you're doing. But if you're like me, you hate that stuff. And that's why I personally recommend Groove Pages, the all-new, all-in-one funnel website sales platform from internet marketing legend Mike Filsaime. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to sign up for a free and build a complete site at no cost. Actually, truly free. There's literally no cost, and I believe you can actually still build up to 3 fully functioning websites at theattorneypost.com/groove. They have a huge list of apps for the platform that'll turn it into a webinar platform, sales funnel platform, website, blog, as well as an affiliate program, or basically anything you can imagine. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife of a website builder. And again, you can visit theattorneypost.com/groove to get started for free today. No credit card needed. That's theattorneypost.com/groove. All right. Well, Lisa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing good as well. Lisa Marie, do you often go by Lisa Marie? I keep seeing you in all my notes as Lisa Marie, and maybe you just never do that, but it flows really nicely. Lisa Marie Bustos.
It is a name that, so my mom gave me the name Lisa Marie Bustos, and she always denied that I was named after Elvis Presley's daughter until about 10 years ago when my dad finally said, just admit it, Maria. You named her after Elvis's daughter, and she finally said, okay. But I, for ease of reference, I introduced myself as Lisa, go by Lisa. Just call me Lisa. It's easy. And I like to put my full name on things just to kind of honor my mom's choice, I guess.
There you go. And you said her name was Maria. So yeah,
Maria.
Kind of named after your mom too, right? Yeah.
A little bit. She had a whole family story about it, but I think really what it boils down to is that was a popular name in the 80s, and that's what she gave me.
That's fair. I grew up, it's not very popular anymore for whatever reason. I'm a Justin, and I had, 6 Justins in my class growing up. Like, they were just everywhere. It's lousy with Justins, and now, almost nobody has that name. So it is what it is. Well, Lisa is a lawyer who specializes in family law. She was born and raised in San Antonio. She was the first person in her family, if I understand correctly, to become a lawyer. She graduated with honors in psychology from St. Edward's University in Austin before attending law school at St. Louis University, SLU, in St. Louis, Missouri, where she was a member of the Hispanic Law Students Association Moot Court Team and Phi Delta Phi's Honor Fraternity. Lisa began practicing family law immediately after being licensed and has successfully represented clients in all aspects of family cases. She strongly believes that all parties should have a voice in family law litigation and should strive strive to come to pragmatic resolutions in each case. Lisa is an active member of the local community, serving as a board member in several nonprofit community service organizations, and is a member of numerous legal organizations that include the Austin Bar Association, Family Law Section, the Travis County Women's Lawyers Association, and the Texas Family Law Foundation Legislative Review Committee. So question number one, Lisa, having said all of that, is what did I miss?
I think that's a good summary of, just my background. I kind of came from some beginnings of not necessarily directed into law, but I definitely appreciate being here now. I've been doing family law in the Central Texas area for 10 years. And this is what I know how to do, what I love doing, and really what I'm passionate about. And I think throughout my practice, I have learned more and more. And most importantly, I really try, and the whole mission of my firm is to guide my clients to their brighter future. Because let's be honest, divorce sucks, right?
Yeah.
Child custody, divorce sucks. Why do you go to work every day? You go to support your family, and you go so that you can go home and you can try to have a peaceful life. And when circumstances just go beyond that, and that life is no longer, what you originally planned, and it's time to go to plan B, you're not supposed to know what to do. You're not supposed to know what to do throughout divorce. And that is why we're here to help you. And I really, really try to take my clients through as a guide. I'm not here to tell you what to do necessarily. I'm not here to make decisions for you, but I'm the one who knows how to do this. And so let me guide you through this process.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Well, that leads into my next question, because you kind of sort of half answered it already, but I'll go ahead and have you give me the full pitch here. Give me a pitch for your firm. If I met you in an elevator, we had 30 seconds going up, and I was like, "Hi, Lisa, what do you do?" What would you tell me? Who are your ideal clients? Who are the main people you serve? What are the primary services you offer? So on and so forth.
So I really pride myself on looking at the big picture of your divorce, and looking at the big picture of what is the end goal? What are you looking for? And what are the landmines that are between now and the end? And so one of the first questions I ask my clients are, what are your goals? What do you want? Some of those things I can't get you. I can't change your ex. I can't make that ex a different person, and a judge can't either. And so let's keep that focus, and let's keep in mind of what we can achieve and what we can't. And so going back to your question, I really pride myself in my whole elevator pitch is, what is your goal? And let's get you there, and let me guide you through that process.
All right. That makes a lot of sense. So you guys do basically full service family law, and you're centered in and around the Austin area. Do you work across the whole state? Do you really just work in that localized region, just specific counties? What is your main target area?
That's a really good question. So for divorce cases, because it is court-based, and it is usually you usually have to go to court and know the local rules. We do for divorce and child custody cases, we do practice in the Central Texas area. For things like premarital agreements and postmarital agreements, we will practice all over the state. And a lot of that is because we don't have to go to court. That is just a matter of, the most in-person thing you have to do is sign in front of a notary. And we can do a lot of our attorney meetings over Zoom, over phone call, over email. You never have to meet me in person. And I can send a mobile notary to you, or we can do an online notary and get that done, so that you can move on to, again, we're planning. So we're planning for your marriage, and we're planning for your life. And so those two things, divorce, child custody, we do it locally. If you want a premarital or postnuptial agreement, we will do that all over the state of Texas.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. And I definitely, when you're just dealing with basically the paperwork side of it, I guess it really is pretty easy to do that, especially in this modern world, basically anywhere. So that's very cool. So let me ask you this. What got you into law? Were you the little girl that grew up with lawyer Barbie? You just always knew that this is what you were set on, or did you kind of accidentally stumble into it? I know you got a degree in psychology. What led you to go into law, and what led you to go specifically right out of law school into family law?
When I was a little girl, I wanted to be one of two things: a ballerina or a lawyer. My dance career ended at 6 years old because I did not like being told what to do, and I didn't like staying in line. So that is a theme that has run through my entire life. I still do not like to be told what to do. Ask any of my old bosses, or my husband. But, as I started to grow, I don't think I actually wanted to be a lawyer. It's something I circled back to from, in college, I circled back to my old preschool dreams. So I wanted to be a psychologist and I got a degree in psychology because I was fascinated with what made people tick. I wanted to know what people's thought processes were, why they behaved the way they did. If you really sit down and you observe people long enough, you'll start to notice patterns in behavior. And I graduated from college in 2009. It was right, as it was 1 year into the Great Recession. So everything crashed. I mean, you couldn't even get a job as a waitress. It was tough. And I had, in college, I was in student government because I just liked to, I thought that was an opportunity I fell into. I was an RA because it was another opportunity I fell into. So I didn't realize that I was building my resume for law school. And I decided to take the LSAT and apply my junior year and senior year. And, it was a really competitive year because everybody was going to law school. They were just trying to buy time in graduate school so that they didn't have to face their student loans or they, didn't have to face the reality of unemployment. And so I went straight into law school and had almost zero life experience. I was, the reality was I didn't have a lot of life experience, and I went into law school and was drawn the most to family law because it again went to helping real people in real situations. And that was the area of law that really, really made the most sense to me and was really the piece of law that I picked up the most. I got a tax concentration in law school, which I do not recommend if you want a high GPA. But I think, ultimately even that education helped with learning with advising people now.
Gotcha. Sorry, you heard a background beep right there. I have
Okay.
a background recording piece that I forgot to let in just in case my main recording doesn't work. So for those of you listening, that beep that you may have heard was just my background recording bot. So let's talk about, obviously, you mentioned going into law school during the last big economic slowdown. And of course, our whole country just experienced something very unique, and hopefully we're not going into something even worse. But we just got through that pandemic. In fact, one of the sponsors I just read was National ERC. And I'm kind of curious, what was your experience of the pandemic? I've talked to lawyers in various, niches of the law, various states, and they all seem to have very different experiences. I've talked to family lawyers in California that said it streamlined their process and they were able to work with everyone all over California. Now that everyone knows how to Zoom, it opened up pathways. Other people are like, I hate it because, now we have to Zoom in. We still have to Zoom into court and they're never going to go back to normal. So what was your experience of the pandemic, Lisa? How did it affect you? How did it affect your practice of law? How did it affect the way you work with your clients, et cetera?
Oh, when I started my law firm, I started in 2018 and I started as a virtual law firm. So when the pandemic hit, we just went home and we did what we did every day. The reality was that business exploded and I had more clients and more business than I could meet that demand. And so part of it was figuring out who I wanted to serve and who I was best able to serve. What my capacity was, what my firm and staff's capacity was. But really, we hit the ground running. And we were, the family law lawyers, we go to court the most often. We're the ones that are trying cases more so than some of the other areas of law because we're 80% of the docket, if not more. And so we hit the ground running on Zoom court hearings. And honestly, I love wearing soft pants and not having to dress in a suit every day. So it was nice. I was party from the waist down, and from the top up, I was, in a suit. And I still, this whole recording is by Zoom. So, I still follow that philosophy to this day, if I can help it. I'm in Birkenstocks. I think there was
Birkenstocks.
Yeah. And
it's like the Zoom equivalent of the mullet, right? It's like party business in the front, party in the back, right? Business up top, party at the bottom.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And, I get to wear my Birkenstocks and I get to have comfortable feet and a comfortable just dressing. But overall, I think it actually helped the clients to adjust to a more in-person, rather than having all the meetings in person, although I understand clients like that still, and we do accommodate that. It allowed for us to be more flexible with our clients and our clients to be more flexible with us. And that actually helped us serve our clients better. And so the pandemic was a really big boon for the business in the way that we serve our clients, the way that we could set client expectations, as well as how many clients we could serve. And it also saved our clients money a lot of the time, because if I'm waiting on a Zoom call on a docket, I can work on other clients' cases. I'm not sitting there in court all day.
Yep.
I honestly love it. I love it.
I enjoyed it as well. I started this podcast over a decade ago at this point, and it was really awkward at the beginning because I had to talk lawyers through installing. We used Google Hangouts back in the day, and so they had to like log in and get all the things set up and everything else. And then we ended up losing the channel. That's a long story. And so I just kind of let it go by the wayside. And when the pandemic broke out, all of a sudden, everyone knew how to Zoom. I didn't have to talk them through installing Zoom. Like, oh yeah, I got Zoom. We'll Zoom. So that's actually one of the reasons I rebooted the podcast as well. I imagine, obviously, that's very useful for doing things like the prenuptial, postnuptial things where you can just meet people digitally. Have you ever had to Zoom into court or do anything? I don't know if you do as a family lawyer, take depositions or anything like that when you're working on a client's issue in a divorce, but have you ever had any weird pushback doing things digitally that way?
I have done all of the above, as far as Zoom goes. Zoom has become my little home away from home, so to speak. But yeah, there has been some pushback, mostly from judges. And I think a part of this is that I'm a millennial. I'm not a young millennial, but I'm a millennial. So I have kind of gone from seeing things go on paper to things going online. When I started practicing, everything was paper, and now everything is online. I barely have any paper files. I think the reality is that, at least in Texas, the majority of our lawyers and our judiciary are of a different generation. And there was very, very strong, I think a stronger reaction from people who are less inclined and less comfortable with being online. And as someone who kind of their adulthood and my adulthood, well, I got on Facebook when I was in college. Facebook was like starting right as I was in college. I hit that sweet spot. But I think, some of this was just being uncomfortable, but there was an adaptation that happened pretty swiftly, and we got things moving. And, the pushback from judges were just because they didn't like it. But overall, we had to get it done. And so we got it done. The lawyers, the judges, the courts, everybody got it done, and we moved forward. And, people were still having children. There's been a bit of a growth in children being born, as well as, if you hear my doorbell in the back, I don't know if you can hear that. But there's been a growth in, children being born and people deciding that they didn't want to live together anymore because it was dang hard. But yeah, so, life kept moving. So we all had to keep moving.
Yeah. Now, did you notice during the pandemic? I've heard some people say that they noticed a big bump or uptick in divorce cases because people all of a sudden were forced to live together and realized that they just weren't happy. I've heard other people say they actually didn't see that at all. And so, in your experience, did you experience or did you notice an uptick in divorce type cases, or was it? I know you said you were busy during that time, but was that because all of a sudden everyone was getting divorced? And do you know what the stats were in your neck of the woods? I know some places saw higher rates than others, but
I honestly wish I had a number for you. I wish I had a statistic that I could just pull out of my pocket and say, yes, there is an increase by this much percentage. I can tell you anecdotally.
82% of statistics are made up on the spot. So, if you would have done it, I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Right. Anecdotally, I can tell you that there was an explosion of divorce cases and child custody cases, because people who lived together, who had children, who chose not to get divorced, needed to separate. Right. And a lot of it, what I heard, wasn't so much new problems that were newly discovered. It was old problems that could no longer be tolerated. because of the situation that they were living in. So I think it just, what the pandemic did was shine a light on problems that had long existed and needed to be dealt with at one point or another. It was just that the pandemic was that breaking point. So yeah, there was a in my opinion, there was a bit of an explosion.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm always curious to hear what everyone's experience is, because it is very different across the board. And even, being Austin, which is a big city, a little, left leaning politically, as opposed to a very small town in, the rural part of Utah, right? Which I've talked to
Yeah.
people in those positions, right? And then just everyone has a very, very different experience. So it's kind of fascinating. Well, let me ask you this. Let's talk a little bit more about your actual practice. So you've been practicing law for a little bit now, running your own firm, chief cook and bottle washer there. And I'm sure in your experience, you've had some big successes, hopefully, and also probably a few failures along the way. One of my favorite questions to always ask my listener or my guest is just, can you tell us, Lisa, about one of your biggest failures? Disclosing whatever you feel like you can safely disclose, but it's only a failure really if you don't learn from it, right? So obviously, anytime we fail, hopefully we take a lesson along and we carry that forward. So can you tell our listeners about one of your biggest failures, or one of the things even if it keeps you up at night or whatever it is, but what you learned from it and how you carry that forward to make sure that you're taking the best care of your clients moving forward?
I don't have a, this is more of a general lesson that I learned. And when I was younger attorney in family law, there's a lot of death by a thousand cuts. And so each cut attorneys will fight about. And it's very, very lucrative for attorneys because your clients are paying you by the hour. So if you're fighting over a tiny cut, metaphorical cut, if you're fighting over that tiny cut, you can make a lot of money. And when I worked for other firms and you're working by the billable hour and you're looking at those things, you don't always see the bigger picture of getting that client to the end. And I think at the beginning of my career, I don't know if this is necessarily a failure so much as a learning lesson that needs to happen as you age and progress as an attorney, is, looking at that bigger picture and seeing what that bigger picture is so that you can tell your client, hey, this is a tiny cut, put a Band-Aid on it, let's keep it moving, because you don't want to spend $1,500 arguing about this cut because it ain't going to do a damn thing. Excuse my cursing. I am a family law attorney. We see all sorts of kinds over here. But, I think that is really one of the biggest lessons that I learned from being a younger attorney to where I am now, and seeing the experience of let's keep it moving, and having an attorney who's able to tell you that, not just tell you, because people like to have their feelings validated, especially by their divorce attorneys, because their ex is in this moment the worst person they've ever met. And the reality is, hey, you got to co-parent with this person, or you got to figure out what your long game is and move on, whether that's by property or by children or whatever. And so let's look at that big picture. Let's look at that long-term goal and get you there, rather than just having that quote unquote bulldog attorney who will bark at every little cut and cost you tens of thousands of dollars more than an attorney who will refocus you on what your goal actually needs to be.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I love working with attorneys that won't BS me and will be like, this is the most practical way forward. You can pay more if you want. I don't mind getting paid, but this is what we need to be doing, and don't worry about the rest of the stuff. I think that's very important. And it's good to know that that there are attorneys out there that are like that. Well, let's put the shoe on the other foot though. I'm sure you've had a couple of cases that were maybe big successes. Maybe they were, you really thought you had a losing case, but the judge decided in your favor, or maybe you just know that you made the best difference in somebody's life. But can you let our listeners know about one or two of the feather in your cap, so to speak, the things you're most proud of when you think about what you've accomplished as an attorney so far?
I mean, overall, my bigger parts are, I love working with people. I love meeting people. I love knowing their story and helping them to their end, which I talked about. I think I said to their end or guided their, 10,000 times during this, half hour we've spoken. But I also go to court I go to court quite a bit, and I was reminded recently just how much I love being in the courtroom. I love putting all the pieces together in a puzzle and really synthesizing it so that my client's story, which is years long, is synthesized into an hour and a half so that the judge clearly understands it, can clearly get her side of the story. And last week, in fact, we had a case where we did a final trial. I was able to synthesize my client's story, got her almost everything she really asked for. After we narrowed down some of her issues, we got her almost everything that she asked for. And we got a $31,000 judgment and attorney's fees in her favor, which is huge. And some of that is going to be awarded as child support. And so she can, get that withheld from my client's pay or from her ex's paycheck. And that is really, really helpful because it's not just a matter of getting some of these things and meeting her goals, but actually executing on them after her case is over, and she can move forward with that. And it's not just a judgment in name, it's a judgment that can be executed on. I'm really, really proud of that.
That's pretty awesome. What is the process of somebody wanting to work with you? If somebody is considering a divorce, maybe their spouse has already filed, paperwork or whatnot. What does the process look like for someone to get a hold of you, figure out what their rights are, how they move forward, et cetera? And also, just out of curiosity, I'm sure you at least have resources. I know you can't take on every case. I'm sure you don't work pro bono, but what do you do when someone comes in and they really don't have a budget? Now, obviously, sometimes you can win fees, right? So what is your game plan for that? And how do you help people? And what are the steps of working with you?
So working with me first, you can find me on my website. You can call me. We have you schedule a consultation, so you can call my phone number. It's 512-766-2768. You can we'll run a conflicts checks by Texas law, and by state law, by our ethics board, we are required to run a conflicts check. So we'll make sure that we have not represented your ex on the past or anything like that, and then we'll schedule a consultation. And in those 30-minute, we do a 30-minute consultation typically. And in those 30 minutes, we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in your case, and we'll talk about how I can help you. Sometimes I tell clients, listen, I can't help you. This is not something that I think is worth filing, and I can take your money, and I understand you have money to pay me, but this is not worth filing. Because again, this is a cut, and there's no reason to pay tens of thousands of dollars just for a cut. I try to give my clients honest advice. And sometimes I tell them, this is a settlement case. You need to settle this case because this should not go into litigation. But we have those initial consultations so that I can get a feel for that client can get a feel for me. This is really an interview on both sides. I want to make sure that this is someone that we can have a good working relationship with, and that they will feel that they can trust me and have honest conversations with me and tell me everything. And then, I can tell them that I can have an honest conversation with them, and I can give them the truth, because that is what they've come to me for. They're not coming to me to tell them what they want to hear, because the reality is I can tell them whatever they want and I can take their money. That's easy. That's not the hard part. And I can go to court and I can bark up every tree and I can do all sorts of things. That's easy. The difficult part really is where the rubber hits the road, and where the reality hits of when we go to court, I'm going to ask the judge for these things, but he or she is going to tell you no. Mm-hmm. And you're going to spend all this time and money and not only not get what you're asking for, but maybe the judge is going to do something and like increase your child support or decrease your visitation time because you've reopened the case. So it's really weighing down those options and giving them frank advice. And that's a part of what I bring to the table when someone works with me. If someone doesn't have the resources or they have limited resources, I unfortunately can't take pro bono cases at this time because I just don't have the resources to do that. Yep. But let's say they can meet the initial retainer, but they can't. I know that they're not really going to be able to make past that. I do try to work with clients to give them that frank advice up top so that we know based on their goals what we need to do. And I try to align my clients' goals with their budget. So if they have a divorce case where they can, I had a consultation this morning where someone had a divorce case and most things were in agreement, but some things weren't, and they had a limited budget. And so I said, hey, you need to do some behind the scenes research on your own. I'm going to send you to a mortgage broker. I don't get any kickbacks from this mortgage broker, but I'm going to send you to this mortgage broker because I know that she will spend time educating you. And that is not time you have to pay me. And I'm going to recommend that you talk to this therapist because some of this is emotional issues that aren't going to be solved in a courtroom. And I know that, and it's good for you to know that. And some of these other things like financial planning, I'm going to send you to these other resources that are outside my firm that I get absolutely no kickbacks from. I don't make money from it, but it saves my clients money in the long run. And that's ultimately what I try to do. I'm not necessarily here to save a client's money, but I am here not to just ruin their lives financially as they go through the divorce process.
Gotcha. That's really fascinating to think about. And I've not had a lot of attorneys say that, they're networked in that way, although I'm sure many are. So that if you have an issue, they can plug you in with the right people. And what I remember, my mother passed away last year, and we were dealing with the funeral home, and I was actually surprised with how networked he was. Like, well, here's a mortgage specialist that you'll need to talk to about doing these sorts of things, and they can guide you through the process. And if you want to use them to sell the house, great. I don't get a kickback or anything. It's the same kind of thing. But it's really neat to see that you're networked in that way, and you can utilize your connections and those sorts of resources to really help somebody out in a way. Because it is emotionally devastating, obviously, going through a divorce. It is tantamount to death, death of a loved one, because it's your whole life being split in a real sense. But it's nice to see that you can at least try to help them, not wind up totally financially devastated in the process. And I know a lot of times, sometimes one spouse isn't working, and so they come in with it without a whole lot of, ammo in their back pocket, so to speak, in order to take on the task of the divorce. So it's good to hear that. I'm sure people come to you, Lisa, with misconceptions or myths about what it is you do, what it is you can do. What would you say is one of the biggest myths people come into your office thinking you're going to be able to do for them? And how would you like to, formally disabuse them of that myth?
Oh, geez. I have a whole, I started a TikTok series about myths in divorce. There's all sorts of myths. Like one of them is Texas is a community property state, right? So if you earn something during the marriage, it's even if it's your paycheck, that belongs to both parties. And so anything that was paid for that belongs to both parties. So a lot of people will say, well, I paid for this with my money. No, it's our money in that kind of situation. Not me as our, but it's the marriage's money at that point. I feel like some of these myths would just be resolved a little bit more with education, which is why I have my own YouTube channel. If you search on YouTube, Bustos Family Law, I talk a lot about these myths and just educating yourself. But, some of the other myths are, if this person doesn't make money, they don't get the children. That's not true either. The judge is going to look at what the best interest of the child is. They're going to look at what they're going to look at all the factors, and it's not really about money. It's about what is going to keep the child in the most stable environment, and money is not the only answer to that. I think courts also have, child support legislation that they can rely on, and a few other things so that they can move past that.
Gotcha. We can find, you can look up online. If I think about it, I might even put them in the show notes. I'll probably forget because I know I know how I work, but you can find
how my brain works. I have an assistant for that reason, to keep me.
Yeah, I utilize the assistant all the time, but this is her Instagram. Obviously, she says she has a TikTok as well. So look her up on the TikToks, and you can make use of all of that.
Check out my Instagram, my Facebook. We also have a YouTube page. I post long form videos on YouTube, and I send current clients as well as potential clients to that YouTube page, because I really have worked to synthesize information and educate you on that. But yeah, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. We're on Twitter, although we're not as active on Twitter because Twitter has some weird things going on with their new CEO. So, I'm not sure how stable that platform is going to be. And on TikTok, all of our handles are at Bustos Family Law, Bustos, and you can find us there.
Awesome. Well, there's the YouTube channel right there at Bustos Family Law. So got about 15 videos on there. Looks like there's a wealth of knowledge, some longer form, some shorter form. So do feel free to check her out there as well, you guys. And very, very cool. I like to see that. All righty. Let me get rid of that really quickly here because it's talking in the background. I don't think you can hear it, but I can hear it, and it's throwing me off.
Can't hear it. So you can hear my voice twice, I guess.
What is one of the biggest challenges that you face, Lisa, when it comes to doing some sort of either child custody initial agreement or child custody modifications? Well, I'm sure that that's probably one of the hardest parts of what you do, right? How do you make sure that you're always keeping the best interest of the child in play while you're representing your client, and of course, contesting potentially, who gets the primary share of the custody? And have you ever found yourself in a position where you actually thought that the other spouse, the one you weren't representing, might be a better fit for having the kids? Does that ever happen? I'm just curious.
I mean, sure, that there's times where clearly you have the client that is either, they have addiction issues or instability issues, and it's very clear that they should not be the primary parent, because they're not going to be able to really take care of that child. And you have that conversation with the clients. But honestly, going back to your question, what is the biggest, I think you said the biggest challenge I have in this? It's really managing, and well, I don't know if it's so much managing, but the biggest challenge I have in divorce cases or child custody cases is the party's fear, because people do not know what's going to happen. And that fear of the unknown is one of the absolute worst things. It drives your anxiety. It drives and this is where my psychology degree comes in, right? My interest in psychology. So it drives, but it helps because, it drives your fear. It drives your anxiety. It makes you panic. It makes you want to feel defensive and protect yourself. And a lot of times that means that the person who wants to protect themselves hires that bulldog attorney who barks at every tree and costs the parties tens of thousands of dollars, because even though I'm personally not like that, because I know what's going to happen, right? We're going to go to court and the judge is going to give XYZ and you're asking for ABC, and that's just like not the reality of the world. But the attorney is there barking because the attorney's making money off each bark, right?
Yeah.
Imagine that you hire that bulldog attorney that loves to bark, but it's $300 a bark. Nobody thinks about that when they ask for the bulldog attorney, is like, how much does each of those barks cost? And that is driven by the client's fear. Usually it's driven by their anxiety. It's driven by their fear. It's driven by their need to control the situation. And that is really detrimental to the clients. It's detrimental to the children. It's detrimental to the parties. And that's honestly one of the biggest challenges of this profession, is letting the clients know, hey, I got you. And the clients who work with me, they know I've got them. But it is, there's a certain type of personality that really, really clings to that bulldog attorney. And that is just usually harmful. It does more harm than good in most cases. Now, there's exceptions to every rule, but that's just what I've been seeing in my 10 years of practice.
It makes a lot of sense. I feel like I was going to ask one other question about that, but I think I, in one ear and out the other sometimes.
That's how it goes.
That's how it is with life. Well, Lisa, I want to say first off, thank you for meeting with us today. I don't want to take up the entirety of your morning, going into your afternoon here. Here in a minute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you my famous 2 questions. I'll give those to you beforehand so you can kind of think and percolate on them, and we'll jump over, show your slide again, and read from our final sponsor, which is, of course, yours truly. Question number 1 is going to be, if you can go back in time and meet young Lisa, maybe fresh out of either fresh going into college, with looking at psychology, or fresh out of law school, what advice would you give yourself and why, other than, again, the obvious, buy a lot of Bitcoin, trust me, hold it till 60K. And then question number 2 is, if I give you my magic pen, now this pen is from the Spice Merchant, which is a lovely coffee shop / spice selling place in Wichita, Kansas. I'm not affiliated in any way. I just happen to have one of their pens, and it's a great shop. But I found out that this pen can do magic things. It can strike laws from the books. It can edit laws that are on the books, and it can add new laws that aren't currently there. If I loaned you this pen so you could make a change, and it could be, again, a big change with sweeping national ramifications, or it could be a little tiny stupid law that makes you fill out forms in triplicate 10 times a week, what law would you change and why? While you're percolating on that, we're going to jump back over And we'll take a look again at your website. Again, this is Bustos Family Law. That is bustosfamilylaw.com. As always, link in the description down below. You can schedule a consultation by using the little button right there in the middle of the screen. Or, of course, you can call 512-766-2768. Our last sponsor today is Rank with News. If there is a guaranteed way to get your law firm or business featured in major national publications like Yahoo News, Forbes, Bloomberg, and others, and then to see those articles rank locally, sometimes in under 8 hours for major competitive keywords that were keywords people were looking for, what else would you need to know? Rank with News is simply the most powerful way to hit page 1 in under 2 weeks safely, organically, and permanently. This is essentially guaranteed SEO, or search engine optimization, on steroids, ranking quickly and sticking sometimes indefinitely. Visit rankwithnews.com to learn more and book a time to speak with a specialist about featuring your firm or your business in major national 8-figure traffic sites that can launch you to page 1 in a matter of hours and help you dominate your local marketplace. Get media exposure, rank higher in Google, build credibility, and win more customers and more clients with rankwithnews.com. There we go. All right. So question number 1, Lisa, we're able to go back in time because this pen is super magical and it takes us back in time. And we see a young Lisa, fresh out of law school. What advice would you give yourself? And by extension, obviously, anybody else that's looking to go into law or fresh out of law school themselves?
The advice to myself, and usually the advice that I give to younger attorneys, is to buckle up, buttercup. Here's the thing. I would like to think my talents is that I'm resourceful. And the reality is that if I could go back and tell my younger self anything, it's to embrace your strengths and embrace your weaknesses. And I spent a lot of time in the first half of my legal career so far trying to erase my weaknesses or minimize them as much as possible. And it wasn't until I really started to embrace my weaknesses and embrace my strengths that I figured out how to really be successful in the law. And I feel like if I would have done that sooner, it would have been a little bit less of a mental struggle, an emotional struggle. And that's the advice that I would give to most people, is figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are and embrace them. You are who you are. And there are some things you just can't change. And some things maybe you can change, but they're not worth changing. And to move your career forward in that direction as best you can and be as resourceful as possible. The faster you learn to pivot and the faster you learn to be light on your feet, the more successful you'll be. And, as far as your question in the second part of everything, if there's a law I could change, this is very Texas specific, and I'm waving around my pen. I don't know why. I'm going to put that down. But if I had my own pen that I could change the law, Texas is very specific in that in a divorce case, it is adversarial, no matter what. It's a lawsuit, it's adversarial. There has to be a petitioner, there has to be a respondent. Even if everybody, and there's lots of legal red tape you have to jump through in order to get your divorce approved. And some of it's for public policy and it's for the best interest of the children, and I get all that. But a lot of it is just red tape, and it creates time and money increases for clients. So if there was anything that I could do, I would create an uncontested divorce lane. It's like when you have an express lane for uncontested divorces, just so that people could move on with their lives quicker. If I could make that change, that's what I would do.
Gotcha. Very simple, very practical. I like it. Well, Lisa, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me today. I think my listeners have enjoyed getting to meet you. I always like to give my my guests the final word. Do you have any parting words of wisdom? Though you just imparted some to us a minute ago, but any last words or last thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Man, get a time machine and go buy Bitcoin.
Man, when I figure that one out, let me tell you. Whew.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, again, thank you very much. I appreciate the sense of humor as well. That's always good. For those of you listening online, if you're watching this on YouTube, we do always appreciate a like, a subscribe, and a share. If you're listening to this on any of the podcast repositories, whether that's Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, etc., give us a rating, a review, a comment, a share, whatever it happens to be. If you know someone, especially in the Austin area, that could benefit from this information, obviously, please feel free to share it with them as well. This has been The Attorney Post. I've been chatting with Lisa Marie Bustos of Bustos Family Law. Link in the description down below, as always. As a reminder, This podcast, though we do deal with legal topics, is not itself legal advice. And if you have a legal issue, you should always seek the competent advice of an attorney in your field, in your neck of the woods, who specializes in the matters that you need help with. Obviously, if you live in the Austin area, you need a family law attorney. Lisa seems like she has a really great head on her shoulders, and I think I can highly recommend her. So again, link in the description down below. Bustos Family Law, 512-766-2768. That being said, again, always seek competent legal advice, because as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Thanks for listening, guys. And until next time, bye-bye.